Spirit of God, we pray that you move in and through these words and in and through our hearts, so that we might be able to more fully answer the question, who we believe you to be. To this end, may the words of my mouth and the meditation of each one of our hearts be acceptable in your sight, O God, our rock, and our Redeemer. Amen. We are reading in Matthew's Gospel, the 16th chapter, verses 13 through 20. Let us listen for what the Spirit may be speaking to the church. Now, when Jesus came into the district of Caesarea Philippi, he asked his disciples, "Who do people say the Son of Man is?" And they said, "Some say John the Baptist, but others Elijah, and still others Jeremiah or one of the prophets." Jesus said to them, "But who do you say that I am?" Simon Peter answered, "You are the Messiah, the Son of the living God." And Jesus answered him, "Blessed are you, Simon, son of Jonah, for flesh and blood has not revealed this to you, but my Father in heaven. And I tell you, you are Peter, and on this rock I will build my church, and the gates of Hades will not prevail against it. I will give you the keys of the kingdom of heaven, and whatever you bind on earth will be bound in heaven, and whatever you loose on the earth will be loosed in heaven." And then he sternly ordered his disciples not to tell anyone that he was the Messiah. This is the word of our Lord.
Thanks be to God.
One of my seminary professors was always fond of reminding us arrogant students this important warning. What you say about Jesus often says way more about you than it actually does about Jesus. How do we get around that often mistake? Well, we have to go into the text. We have to ground who we say Jesus is into who Jesus has been reported to us through the Scriptures. As soon as we take away the context and setting of Jesus' life and ministry, we can believe Jesus is pro-us, pro-violence, pro-death. This week, we get an opportunity to wrestle with what we think about Jesus and respond to a very pointed question. Jesus begins with what looks like a very generalized question. What are people saying about me? It's like a good teacher who knows how to warm up a class, get them going, start easy, where they start answering the easy questions, jumping in, getting them thinking. Then he asks, what do the crowds say about the Son of Man? It's really an easy question, right? All you have to do is simply report what people have been hearing. It's like the student who's read the material and says, "Oh, I know, I can tell you exactly what the book says is the answer, and I've done my work well." But any good teacher doesn't let simple fact regurgitation be the end of the story. Once the class is warmed up, you ask the deeper, harder question, a question that will force the students beyond what they simply know to what they might think based in fact. A question that forces the student beyond simple reporting. Yes, but who do you say that I am? The truth is, each one of us have to ask that question and answer it for ourselves. The truth is, though, for us, much like Peter, we're probably pretty quick to answer. We know. We all went to Sunday school. We listened at least half-heartedly, and we were in church enough to know the right answer. Jesus was the Son of the living God. Got that. It's tough. We're the Easter people. We know the rest of the story. We're not being asked this question not knowing what's on the horizon for Jesus. We already know. But simply saying that Jesus is the Messiah, or Savior, or Son of God, or Son of Man, or whatever title that we do know, it is not enough. We have to unpack it. who do you say that Jesus is? Who is Jesus to you? What does he mean? And how does that impact how you live your life? Those are some hard questions. We'd much rather just say, Messiah, and we're going to move on. But that's the hard question. And if we are truly honest with ourselves and dig, it might convict us a little bit. I know it does as I wrestled with it this week. But before I push you on that question, because that question is coming again, we're going to talk about some easier kinds of things. The details of where this occurred. Why is it that it happened here in Caesarea Philippi? Because the one thing we know is the gospel writers don't tell stories by accident. They tell them in particular ways. Caesarea Philippi. Why this is the location that Jesus chooses to ask this question. He could have asked it at any other point along the way, but he asks it here. So what is it about Caesarea Philippi? That's what we have to ask. Well, it is, and some of you I think might have been there, but I have been there, and it was one of the largest temples to the god Pan. Now, if you're not familiar with Pan, he was the one who often gets framed as what we now think of as the devil. Half-hoofed, tiny little horns. But his role in the pantheon of gods was that of shepherd king. He shepherded. Now that's interesting. And then the title of the town is Caesarea Philippi, which is a variation of the term Caesar. So this is where the Romans would also force their worship of the emperor upon the empire. It was a temple city to the living embodiment of God on earth, the emperor. Caesar was the son of the living God. Caesar was the savior of the world, the bringer of peace, Prince of Peace. I know those are titles you might have never put on Caesar, but Caesar had them first. So Jesus asked this question in this place, not without reason. Jesus is the one who is listed as the good shepherd. The sheep will know my voice and come in. No other shepherd will lead my people. He asked in this place to point out that he is the good shepherd, unlike the shepherd kings of that day, who sought enriching themselves and their own family at the expense of the poor, the widow, and the orphan. We know something about that, I believe. This is where Jesus asked the question, who do you say that I am? And it begins to move us beyond Buddy Jesus. I don't know if you've ever seen it, but there's actually a stuffed animal that's about this big. It's not stuffed, it's a stuffed human that supposedly looks like Jesus, furry hair, and they call him My Buddy Jesus. They used to actually have those ads in the Presbyterian magazine. They aren't there anymore. I think they stopped selling Buddy Jesus. But when we stand in Caesarea Philippi, in the shadow of the Temple of Pan, with the title of the town being about worshiping the emperor as the living God, and Jesus asked that question, there are very concrete political implications for the answer that we give. These titles that Jesus claims for himself, that Peter, on behalf of all the disciples who are gathered there, give to Jesus, is not just throwaway lines that we like to sing that we know well. It is rooted in very political and confrontational moments. Who is Jesus always has to be rooted in this place. Who we say Jesus is and who he means for us has to be rooted in the cross that Rome used solely for those who were political prisoners. And it is in that place that Jesus asked the question, and Peter, I think, for a moment understands who Jesus was. Now, what he didn't know was what that was going to mean for his life yet. Sometimes we confess what we believe before we even know what it will mean. When our faith comes into conflict with that around us, when we are called to take a stand, or to stand up, or to say no, or to resist, or to love those who others say do not love, that is when we know what our confession really means. Jesus' identity, who we say Jesus is, must be rooted in where he lived, who he served, and how he acted. The problem for us with this question is when we forget those things, when we detach Jesus from the person who lived in the world, we are at risk of creating a very different Jesus that has existed for many years. And this is why Jesus says to Peter to remain silent for now, because there will be repercussions. You see, the truth is the powers don't take kindly to those who might stand in their way or to claim power in a way that belongs to them alone. Those who seek to challenge the status quo will face all sorts of retribution. We see it. We've heard it. Some of you might have paid the money and watched that huge boxing match last night. I don't talk sports often. This is going to get political, trust me. Both of those men have quite a record of violence with other people, women in particular. Both walked away with millions of dollars in accolades last night. And to this day, there is a high-quality quarterback who still is without a paycheck because he kneeled to point out that black men and black folk don't matter very much in America. And he did it because he said, partly, the faith that he has in Jesus Christ. And he is paying a significant price. This is why Jesus says, in the moment until you fully understand, Peter, and are there at the crucifixion and the resurrection, do not say a word. Trouble will come and fight you. For those of us who follow Jesus, we have to always ask, who is he to me, and what does that mean? Who? What do you say? Who is Jesus for you? I want to invite you into a moment. It's always dangerous to ask people to close their eyes as a preacher because you're afraid they won't open them back up. But if you're at risk of that, maybe you can leave them open. I want to invite you. I'm not going to force you to close your eyes. I don't actually have my glasses, so I can't see your faces that close. So if they're open or closed, I won't know this morning. They're on my dresser at home. But I can certainly still read what's here in front of me. But I want to invite you, if you would, for just a moment, to close your eyes. Take a deep breath. And I want you to imagine for a moment that Jesus, however you picture him, is now asking you that question. Who am I to you? Don't think about what you do not believe who he is. Think about who he is to you. What do you believe about him? Now you can open your eyes or nudge your neighbor to help them open theirs. The question that I have, and I'm not going to ask you to share it out loud, has to do with what you heard, what you saw, what you know. You might have a really clear answer at this moment, but then again, you might still have a somewhat cloudy picture, sorting out what all the different layers and levels. You might have gone down quite a trail, and that's fine. But what I want to say is this, and this is the hard question. Given the answer that you came up with, or are starting to form, where in your life does that answer impact how you live? Jesus, throughout his life, invited people to come and follow. Believe and follow, but not to just simply believe. What do you think? And I've got all the bases covered on the orthodoxy, and then I'm good. Jesus went far beyond that. So whatever you came up with, the question is where does that answer bear fruit in your life? And that is the question that we are called to live with. How does what I believe lead me to live differently in the world? What I believe about Jesus, who I say Jesus is, a Son of God, or Savior, or Messiah, these titles themselves have never really changed for me, but how I emphasize them certainly has as I've grown in life and as I've lived my life. And that is why Jesus asked the question in that place. Peter was bold and claimed to know. We know that's sort of Peter's M.O. He was there and said powerfully who Jesus was, but then in the garden, in the night after Jesus had been arrested, he said, I don't know who he is. I've never even heard of him before. I don't know anything about him. Same one. In one moment can confess that he is powerful and Lord and Son of the living God, and the next moment go, I don't have no idea who that is. Sorry. It's a model and a reminder for us as well. Some days we're bold, and others we are meek. And never are we cast aside. And then there's after the resurrection that Peter proclaims him as Savior in a new and vibrant and possibly a lot less arrogant kind of way. Life has impacted him. Life changes and grows our faith if we're willing to reach deep into the stories and vibrant, life-giving stories of our faith and to continue to engage. That is our calling, to keep engaging these questions, what we believe matters, and recognizing that there will be times of growth and change as well as times of receding of our faith and even possibly withering of our understanding, crisis moments, and through them all we might even feel that we have been abandoned. But the good news is just because Peter gives up on Jesus, Jesus does not give up on Peter. Even on our worst day, we are not alone. We are never kicked to the curb because we are not super disciple. And for that, I am thankful. The calling of our lives is to keep going, keep living, keep loving, and seeking to grow deeper in the life of faith even when it is tough. Those two questions. Who do you say that I am? And how does that lead you to live differently in the world is the heart of our faith. It is not enough to say we believe, but to say that our belief leads us to be different, to love, to make different decisions in the world. Let those questions be our guiding light. Who is Jesus, and what does that mean for me now? And I believe it will be richer in our journey of faith than we might ever imagine. Now, one of the things that always struck me odd about this passage is about that passage around keys and loosing and binding. I don't know about you, but I don't really loose much these days. That seems such a word that we just don't use. However, here's the thing about those two words, and I need to say something about them because it does tie together, I think. Those are the details. Dig down into the Greek, what they are is about constitutional Greek-Roman law. The idea was that what Jesus was saying is what you do here on earth. Beyond who you say I am, the rest is details that you are responsible for sorting out. In other words, this is where we have to recognize that Jesus is giving an awful lot of freedom to the followers about how they order their common life. That's what's being said here. We are given that responsibility. Jesus does not say, here's the order of the church, this is how it has to happen forever and ever, amen, and this is exactly how you must do things. We never get that. It is about the details where God gives us this openness. How we worship, how we order our common life, how we do mission, how we serve others. All of those are up for debate. And that is why I'm convinced there are so many different variations of the followers of Jesus Christ. As long as we continue to try to root them in the life, death, and resurrection of Jesus Christ, then we have to recognize that other folks just do things somewhat differently than us. I know it's hard, especially when some consider us not Christian. We just need to go about our own way. Jesus reminds the disciples, if they're not with us, as long as they're doing our work, don't worry about what they're up to. Stay in your lane. Focus on yours. And that is why I believe the second question is so important. Because we've been given this opportunity to do things differently, to order our lives, we have to dig deep about what does it mean when we say Jesus is Lord. What does that look like here on the corner of Del Mar and Union? What does that look like when you go to work? What does that look like when you are in the community, when you're out and about, when you're driving in the car in rush hour traffic? How does your faith live out in those moments? I won't mention there was a Riverfront Times article about the 99.1 stickers on cars often go with people who drive more poorly. Our witness is being hurt by that, so I don't put stickers on my car that identify me that way because sometimes my witness isn't great there. Moment of confession that I'm working on. But how we live in the world is in fact an extension of our belief. The question is how? And if we're asking those questions, the living out will be much more vibrant. What we do, how we live, how we love are important to God. And they have an impact beyond anything we could imagine. What is loosed and bound on earth will be loosed and bound in heaven. God is watching and cares and gives us way more authority than sometimes we believe. So we have to keep asking these questions. And then despite our falling down, trust that there is resurrection in every moment. The possibility of new life is always there. If we lead with our passion and love for God, we will be on the right path, even if sometimes we don't know. So let us answer that question and struggle with the second one. Who do we say Jesus is? And how will I live differently because of it?